Hi, stranger. It's been a while. It's okay. You can look at my book. Stars look beautiful tonight. Really puts the universe into perspective, doesn't it? Listen, I know you've been feeling stressed lately, rushing around, trying to finish everything you're working on, so worried about trying something new because you don't think it will turn out right. You're so hard on yourself. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be open to failure, to let yourself be vulnerable. Only then can you take those first few steps without fear.
So hurry up and finish another video already! Garbage man! Garbage man! Here's a video about Ghost Game.
Well, talk about striking while the iron is stone cold. Ghost Game as a Digimon anime had a mixed response. Early impressions were quite positive, and it had a lot going for it. The horror aesthetic gave it a distinct vibe, and it wasn't just for show. Creepy monsters, genuine peril, and chilling body horror. Oh so much body horror. Aizawa Hiroshi and Yubuno Tenya, creators of fan-favourite manga V-Tamer, were brought on for early development of a story and characters. And it was a great cast with varied interests and asymmetrical interrelationships. The Digimon struck a perfect balance between being familiars that complement their partners while also being autonomous individuals with their own wants and desires. The music? Ko Atani. Ko Shadow of the Colossus Atani. Providing an OST that's creepy, spooky, bombastic, yet still whimsical and rousing. And then there's the mystery. What better way to keep an audience hooked? Questions like, what happened to Hiro's dad? What's he doing in the digital world? What's the deal with Black Gatomon? What's the deal with Gamamon and the Dark What figure? Are those dark Why is it there's a timer on Ultimate Who's Digimon sending the Digimon to the real world? Is he under his hand or is he just a huge nerd? Why is Espimon? So the toaster only comes anyone wondering about Hokuto? Why Betsumon? Why does Hiro have that tiny scratch on his ear? Etc, etc. Clearly the show had it made, so what happened? Or rather, what didn't happen?
Three horns never play with long necks.
The broad criticism of Ghost Game is that it was too episodic, while simultaneously it sprinkled in just enough teases and vague allusions towards a central narrative, only to frustrate viewers when it never transitioned to a more serialized format, nor provide any progression to the ongoing mysteries.
Another dead end.
Now, I'm not going to say these feelings are invalid, I share them to an extent. But at the same time I have to wonder, why do we have these certain expectations for how stories should be structured? Theoretically, why can't it save all its revelations for the finale, and gradually build intrigue over the course of... Jesus, a year and a half? I mean, yeah, why is that not acceptable? After all, there's value in many forms of storytelling, and it's not like it's a dichotomy with episodic on one side and continuous story on the other. Structure is such a varied, fascinating spectrum that it often frustrates me how simplified the discourse around it can be, especially when I find the best shows are those that find a potent balance between the two extremes. Being episodic allows your storytelling to be plural, to explore more ideas within these closed loops of narrative, smaller units of story, episodes, I guess. The way, say, The Simpsons can have an episode about gambling addiction, or the temptation of marital affair, or the abuse of immigration policy to deflect political attention. These concepts may be tied together by the theme of satirizing American culture, but the show itself is not about each of these ideas at once. On the other side, continuous storytelling allows for great attention and cumulative meaning to be built up across the storytelling. Tension is all about anticipation and release. And while having smaller moments of these release within a story can be cathartic, there's something special about a show expertly crafting an interconnecting tapestry of threads that come together and stick a perfect landing. But despite both approaches having their strengths, people still have preferences between the two. It's hard to say what determines personal taste, personality, media exposure. While I think it's important for a show to telegraph its structure in some way, and Ghost Game may have dropped the ball in that regard, we all still have our own intuitive sense of story structure. One man's standalone artsy character study is another man's filler episode.
But in my opinion, TV is supposed to be like crack. It's like, and you'll even if you're then told they come in a certain order, you'll go like, yeah, I'm a crackhead. I'll meet you. Like, sure, if there's a number 1 on one of the crack rocks, if it rolls under the couch and there's only 2, 5, and 7, I'm still gonna smoke the crack. So good. See, that's serial.
That was a great message for the kids.
And Ghost Game is the latest in a long line of Digimon animes, so it's hard not to bring some expectations to the table. But then, what exactly do we expect from a Digimon anime?
Science!
Yes, the Modal Archetypal Digimon anime model, or MADAM for short. The quintessential structure to all Digimon anime. Of course, being modal, none of them will fit it perfectly, but it's pretty damn close, with recurring themes and milestones that create continuity across even the most vastly varying of iterations. Each Digimon series is approximately 52 episodes in length and can be broken down into 4 similarly structured sections. The first section is the introductory arc. This is typically the more episodic section, used to introduce the characters, ease us into the world, and gradually roll out early Digivolutions. It'll have a vague, open-ended goal and usually conclude after defeating a mini-boss when one of the characters achieves a special evolution around episode 13. At the very least, something pivotal will happen around this area. The second section, Rising Action, is still quite episodic, but the characters have more directed goals, and most likely there'll be a recurring enemy that's further up the chain of command. Again, it concludes with more Digivolutions and defeating some kind of mini-boss. The third section, Rising Action 2, Rise Harder, is where things really lean more into the serialized format, and the true antagonist of the story is made clear. Other occurrences may be transitioning from the main setting of the digital world to the real world, or vice versa. A 6th Ranger joining the team, a weird ethereal episode, dark Digivolution episode, exposition dump episode. Okay, sorry, this is starting to sound a little TV tropesy, but you get the idea. Having defeated the boss from Section 3, it's revealed in Section 4 that there's actually a bigger, badder boss standing behind them. Maybe they're the true puppet master, or maybe they're a reaction to the first boss. Either way, the stakes are high, the serialization is constant, and everyone discovers that the true power was inside them the whole time. Happy endings all round, for the most part. So with that all explained, let's test out our little thesis here. Adventure fits this like a tailored suit, almost like it was the trendsetter. Starting out, we have the introductory section, File Island, or the Black Gear arc, where they're just exploring and stumbling across strange locations and characters. But then you can also subdivide it into this mini separation arc, where we get to see different pairings interact independent of the main group. This of course culminates in the battle against Devimon, Patamon digivolving to Angemon, and Genai's first appearance directing them towards Folder Continent. Section 2 can likewise be split into 2 parts. There's the Etamon arc and Separation Arc 2, Electric Boogaloo. The real meat of this section is the crests. Not so much finding them, that's kind of token. I mean, Matt and Izzy both find theirs in the same fucking well. The Etamon arc primarily focuses on Tai testing his would-be leader skills, and across the Separation arc, everyone faces their own personalized trials to test their core trait, while there's a background arc primarily spotlighting Sora, which culminates into a Digivolution to Garudamon and a battle against Myotismon. The next arc again can be split into 2 sections, with the first part being the search for the 8th child, where things are still kinda chill, and then the full-on invasion where all hell breaks loose after Gatomon changes sides. This of course concludes with Tai and Matt achieving their mega level Digimon and kicking Venom Myotismon square in the nuts.
Someone got hit in the boing lines.
And then Section 4, where shit really gets real. The final gauntlet against the Dark Masters, Metal Etamon and Apocalypse. Each boss gets about 2 episodes on average to terrorize the kids, and there's another separation arc halfway through. Man, I was not expecting this recurring separation regrouping motif when I was typing this up. But I suppose with such a big cast, it's a great way to keep things perilous while also mixing up the character dynamics. So, Adventure's a clean fit for the model? Is 0-2? Not really! Wow, we had a hot streak of 1 going there for a minute. You can kinda fit it with Metal Greymon being the first section boss, then having Chimeramon and Ken as the section 2 bosses, but that cuts things off a little early in 21. Then there's the Darkspire fake Digimon arc that transitions into Blackwall Greymon, which kind of ends at episode 39 where a Zulongmon shows up to do a big exposition dump. Then Okinawa is introduced as the true villain, and Myotismon is the big Apocalypse level threat. I guess it broadly works and there is a sense of escalation there, but 0-2 on the whole is a lot more freeform and scattershot with its structure, for better or worse. Now, with Digimon Tamers, we're back on track. 14 episodes of the characters battling randomly manifesting Digimon and dealing with their emotional baggage, culminating with the Juggernaut program and Wargrammon's first battle against the Davers.
The Diver has arrived!
In Section 2, we have the real-world battle against the Davers, the team achieving ultimate evolutions, and Impmon's gradual fall to the dark side. This all ends with tearful family goodbyes and the Tamers venturing out to the digital world after fighting a pig!
Together we can send this porker back where he belongs!
Stop now while you still have a choice!
No way!
Then the digital world arc is where things get really fucked. They fight a right big chicken, Azulamon drops in again since I guess he's the god of lore dumps, and for Section 4, they go back to the real world, where things get really, really fucked. Frontier! Bwap, 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 bwap. This season does mix things up a little though. In Section 1, normally when the heroes achieve an evolution, they get to beat the monster of the week so they can really shine as a capable hero. And Frontier subverts our expectations by not doing that. In fact, Zoe is eating shit for quite a while, stuck on the sidelines. But hey, she isn't alone for long. It just goes to show you that some tradition is tradition for a reason, and others, maybe others we could do without. Anyway, Data Squad, bwap 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 bwap. Yep, that all tracks. So the original 5 seasons set a pretty strong precedent for what to expect from a Digimon story. A year-long series that gradually escalates into a more serialized format, with milestone episodes charting a path through the more episodic stretches of the show. But then, there's the newer series. With Cross Wars, even if you treat Young Hunters as its own thing, it still doesn't really fit the traditional format. Rather than having distinct quarters, it's split into 2 halves, and within both of these little mini-arcs set around zones that are usually 2 or 3 episodes each. There are a bunch of threads going through here regarding characters and their mysterious backstories and motivations, and over the course of Part 1, Shoutmon and Taiki gradually build their forces and prove themselves as leaders, and then in Part 2, after a time skip, it's structured around a more traditional League of Evil. We get to see a few old zones and characters suffering under the new oppressive regime, and a would-be 6th Ranger in Nene's younger brother. It would also be one of the first series to stick with a single main villain for its entire run, if you're not counting Quartzbon from Part 3. Speaking of Young Hunters, it's only half a season long and pretty episodic until it gets into the late game anniversary crossover. Try likewise is about half a season long, but it follows a similar cadence to the original Adventure series. Tai has a crisis of confidence, the group keeps breaking up and getting back together again, they swap worlds for a bit, and then they fight this week's Flavor of Satan.
Ass flavor.
The biggest difference with Try is that it really leans into the mystery of things, and even by the end keeps things pretty vague. Either by design because it's reflecting the characters feeling lost as they transition into adulthood, or incompetence because it's not very well explained. Your mileage may vary. Appley Monsters, despite not actually containing any Digimon for the most part, is actually the closest to a traditional season. The biggest key difference is that while it has these well-paced spikes of intensity and shit really gets real towards the end, it quite comfortably resets to easygoing episodic adventures for almost its entire run. After opening the gates to the dark web in episode 26 and spending 1 episode exploring, it isn't even mentioned again until episode 33, where it's revealed that Ray has been exploring independently and has discovered information regarding his missing brother. It led to this ongoing joke where it was generally understood that the central plot wouldn't be pushed forward unless Ray was around.
What a guy.
And then there's Adventure Colon, which is unequivocally 67 episodes long. It has mini-bosses, separations, and regroups. It has a main villain that secretly has another mainer villain behind it. If I stretch and contort the model and squint, it may even fit. A little. Kinda. Not really. But the weirdest thing about it is the sense of escalation, which seems to be kinda reverse, with the general vibe of the show becoming more laid back as it approaches the ending. I suppose you would call it an unescalation in that sense. Yeah. The show starts with a blatant homage to our war game, Nuclear Missile Countdown and all. When the kids get to the digital world, it's almost completely bereft of any friendly Digimon or societies, and yet again they're against another doomsday clock. And then by the final arc, they're going to school, helping a beaver build a dam, and a turtle climb a mountain, all while cruising around with their all-terrain pet dog. These 2 things should be reversed, surely. I guess you could argue that A, it makes it seem like the digital world is getting brighter as a consequence of them defeating the negative forces ruling over it, and B, the final arc is a nice bit of relief after the battle with Millenniummon and served as the calm before the storm before they go into the big battle with Abadomon. And credit where credit's due, it's a damn spectacular ending and tied a nice bow on a somewhat bloated but ultimately enjoyable season. Needless to say, the Madam system is not the be-all and end-all of the Digimon series structure. And whoever said it was? Well, me, mostly, I suppose. I'm kind of banking on people nodding and going, yeah, that sounds about right. But not all iterations follow it so closely. No, some seasons, well, they're playing their own game.
Betty, Judy, Josie, and those hot pussycats. They make me horny, Saturday morning. Girls of cartoons won't leave me in ruins. I want to be Betty's Barney. Hey, Jane, get me off this crazy thing called love.
Ghost Game is the most episodic Digimon series to date, even more so than Young Hunters, if only by virtue of having more episodes. But it sets itself up as being mystery-centric, and the first 13 episodes fit what we might consider to be a traditional opening section, even landing a key milestone on episode 13, a dark evolution and a likewise dark figure overseeing the events. Afterwards, they follow it up with a few episodes, one in which they have to explain the concept of death to Gammamon, and another where Hiro grapples with his own pacifism for the sake of retaining his little brother's innocence. For a moment, it seems like things are coming to a head in episode 20, and while it does lead to a dramatic fight and some character growth for our lead Digimon, it turns out to be mostly a red herring. Then, over the course of the next 40 episodes or so, there's a few more Ghoulish appearances, some incremental character growth, requisite evolutions, and some additions to the gang, but by and large, post-episode 20, there's no milestone episodes that push the central narrative forward. And then it ends. If you're charitable, you could say the last 5 episodes of the Endgame stretch, but functionally the finale is more like 2 episodes long, and the ending, well, let's just say it's memorable. A little baffling. If nothing else, I'm gonna remember how I felt watching it for the first time.
I just want to say, all y'all can suck ass, and I'm a spaceman.
So why? Why is Ghost Game like this? Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the bulk of the episodes. There were lots of fun, spooky scenarios, and some of them went hard. Way hard. But Ghost Game ran for a year and a half. That's a long time to just do episodic content, and the little plot they did have was just stretched so thin. What's more, there were even times where it seemed like the show was setting up arcs to pay off later, like with Dracmon vowing revenge, Espimon looking for Hiro, or even the letter to Hokuto. But they would just fizzle into nothing. Previous series were much better at balancing long-form storytelling with episodic scenarios, so what happened here? Well, according to an interview with the series composer Masashi Sogo, they were concerned with modern audience attention spans. That because of the prevalence of TikTok and YouTube Shorts, they just couldn't retain a kid audience for very long before they got bored and clicked away to something else. So they focused mainly on one-off stories, so people could hop in at any point without having to familiarize themselves with a serialized story. And that is really disappointing to hear, because it's not even true. I mean, maybe for really little kids, but if you're aiming for a really young audience, what's with the... and the... and, you know, the... In the modern age, serialized content is easier than ever. Just do a previously on if you're that concerned. It catches you up, gets you hyped, and saves on animation all at once.
Previously on Avatar.
Everyone, even my own past lives, are expecting me to end someone's life.
Previously on Forest Gate.
Previously on Lost.
The true problem isn't attention spans, it's attention full stop. Standing out in the saturated sea of media just fighting to be noticed. And the way you cut through that is with audience engagement. Shows with long-running mysteries and plot threads that fans can discuss and become invested in. Big event episodes where story threads coalesce into these big milestone moments that they can rally and cheer behind. That's what keeps devotees and casuals watching. But that means you have to throw your audience a bone now and then. Making a show episodic so viewers can just hop in whenever they want only ensures they can hop off whenever they want too. It just doesn't make any sense. It It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. We need to dive deeper.
Oh, dear God, it's growing bigger!
Okay, so Masashi insists that Ghost Game is mostly episodic, but a third of it clearly isn't, which makes it even more baffling that event-wise so little happens in the middle, and yet there was obviously a lot of meticulous thought put into the world and setup, which is evident from the background storytelling. For example, in episode 2 we see Mummymon step outside a husk in a display case, but then when he tries to step through the glass, he bounces off. He's perturbed for a moment, but closes his eyes, concentrates, and manages to step through. This is visually establishing the rules of Ghost Game's mechanics before they are explained more explicitly in episode 8. Likewise, the mechanic by which ultimate evolutions would be timed out but Mega seemed immune to the timer was explained later on too. This is the show teaching us to pay attention to the details. But there's more. Let's hop back a little bit. After the emergence of Gulas Gamamon, a dark evolution, we get another dark variant of Agumon watching from a distance. In addition, Gamamon himself is distinctly white and all of his champion forms are fractal-based colours. So the natural assumption to make here is that whatever Ghost Game's central plot is about, it's got something to do with colours and dark Digimon. Then, episode 20 rolls around and it opens with 2 dark Digimon in a house on fire and a man burning to death. They specifically target Hiro and threaten his friends and you think, this is it. The coalition of dark Digimon, perhaps enemies of Hokuto, are coming to finally kick this thing into second gear. And then, not only is this not the case, but in actuality, the 2 Digimon were trying to save the man in the house on fire. But because he and his neighborhood saw them as nothing but monsters, he dies. And a raging mob scorns them. If this whiplash was on purpose, and I think it was, then it's fucking brilliant. Because by using our genre expectations of how these stories play out, not only did it subvert our expectations and make the Dark Digimon victims of a sort, but it made us, the viewers, complicit in their discrimination. Like, you could say it's a cheap trick given they're literally made of fire and they were acting pretty shady, but it's a cheap trick that worked. We had circumstantial evidence at best and we were ready to assume the worst about them. And now looking back, we can see the opposite is true. Digimon that already have Black Digitron in their cores were the only ones that were immune to Gulas' GRB virus, and many of them helped save the day in the end. To be able to screw with our expectations like this requires a savvy level of anticipation on the writer's part. So why were they doing us so dirty in the middle? Hiro sends a letter to his father making a proactive move to establish contact, and so many episodes later we learn he just asked, how do you deal with strong Digimon? And the answer is basically go fuck yourself. They introduce Espimon as an envoy from Hiro's dad, but he doesn't believe Hiro is really who he says he is because Hokuto described Hiro as his spitting image and Espimon took it too literally, and we're like, okay, as soon as this little misunderstanding is resolved, this will be the pivot point into the next stage of a story. And how does it resolve?
Oi, Hokuto! 何がヒロは俺とウリ2つだ! 適当言いやがって!
それなんだっけ?
Even earlier, they tease us with the return of Drachmon. He shows up later as a lackey in another episode and just dies! In an episode with no less than 3 Digimon that are canonical evolutions to Drachmon! He could have been the main baddie. He could have been the second in command. He could have been the fucking dog! And you know what else is weird? This is the Kanna Weissmon episode. This episode that focuses on Ruli and reintroduces the villain from her focal episode, not a Lomortmon episode. Why? Why are these threads not culminating into anything? Everything was lined up. Everything was lined up. This is the show telling us, nay, screaming at us, that we're looking in the wrong place. That this isn't going to go down the way we think it is. And if so, if we're not supposed to be focusing on plot progressions or shifts in the status quo like we usually do, then what should we be focusing on? And has the show already given us all the clues we need to understand it? And when all is said and done, what was Ghost Game even about?
Na 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 fishing. Na 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 fishing. Fishing, fishing, fishing.
We've talked a bit about plot threads and character arc, but what about theme and allegory, those ghostly qualities that permeate through the subtext of the work? In Adventure, it's understood that the Digimon partners are an external representation of the Digidestined's character growth. The stronger and more self-realized they are, the stronger their Digimon are. Likewise, if they're all messed up, you get Zombie Dino Rampage. That's the mechanics of the magic system anyway. But, as the old song goes, Adventure is about 7 young kids who went to camp one summer. At summer camp, you expose yourself to the uncontrollable elements of nature with a motley group of strangers. Together, you must overcome challenges as a team, building character, learning skills, and forging bonds that will last a lifetime. I think I've never been, and I never will. And at the end of it all, you go your separate ways, out of sight, but never out of mind. That's what Adventure is on a macro level. Heightened fantasy camping. Hiking, sleeping rough, kindling fires, hunting and foraging, fending off the local wildlife, and various predators, and Satan. Even in the final episodes, one of the last things they do is discuss how many more days of summer they have left. But then we have examples on a micro level. Let's take Izzy's Crest episode. When separated from the group, he falls into a deep pit, and a squidgy alien man offers him salvation in exchange for his curiosity. He complies and then works on his ABCs. But while Vaidmon is distracted watching a devil bean trying to take a huge shit, Tentomon breaks Izzy out of his fugue state and they blast their way out of there.
Anyway, I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
This is weird. This is a weird thing to happen. That's fine. I like weird. Weird's fine in my book. But it wasn't until years later that it finally hit me. While farting about doing side quests in Yakuza 0, I stumbled across an interesting group of people. And suddenly, all the iconography clicked into place. Izzy joined a cult! And that makes perfect sense because cult mentality is the antithesis to Izzy's crest of knowledge. Knowledge is hard fought. It can be grueling, lonely, and even when you get the answers, it's not always comforting. Izzy literally falls down into a dark pit, alone, isolated, with nothing but the expansive, cold cosmos to remind him of how small and insignificant he is. And in exchange for salvation, he gives up his critical thinking, his earthly possessions, and numbs himself with pseudo-Zen meditation. It's only through reconnecting with a loved one that he's able to reattain self-consciousness and get out of there!
Out of my way, jerkers!
I got the gist of this when I was a kid, but it wasn't until I was older, when I had the tools and information, the right keys, that I was able to pass the creative choices being made here. Whew, this is fun. What else is there? 02. I mean, that's just Computer Club, right? That's why they can go home and hop back and forth at will. It's also why they're all a bunch of huge dorks. It's like how the other old song goes.
Chilling out with the crew in the schoolyard, finding trouble, never looking too hard.
Tamers? That's a tricky one. Maybe the concept of escapism itself, since they're in a world where Digimon is a legit franchise. Takato is the nerdy Jaden type who just wants to have fun, Rika's the Seto Kaiba type who takes it all too seriously, and Henry's the mediator who just wants to keep the peace. And of course, they're all using escapism to get away from their depressing home lives. Frontier? Something about industrializing the West with infrastructure while the White Devil incites race wars to gain financial and political power, and maybe that sounds far-fetched, but it does end with them stealing a bunch of land. Okay, easy one, our war game. While most of the main series treat the digital world as more of a fantasy land to tell broader stories about personal growth and connection, our war game is more overtly a commentary on our relationship to technology and the internet, and a relatively balanced one that uses a lot of duality. Just to stray a bit off course, you know how through the film Ty's having trouble rallying the gang, Joe's taking a test, Kari's at a birthday party, Sora's in a bad mood? It creates this funny juxtaposition between the epic battle going on inside the computer and the silly mundane stuff that's just getting in the way. But then, when things take a turn for the worse, and the nuclear missile is launched at Tokyo, everything's flipped. Suddenly, all these silly nuisances aren't the problem, they're what's at stake. All these precious, boring, everyday life occurrences will be wiped off the face of the earth, and that's what the heroes are fighting to protect. And it does this with a few things. Early in the film, the gang receive a massive influx of emails, some of them rather choice.
Your Digimon's a loser.
What did you say?
How could 2 mega-level Digimon get beat by 1 lousy bug? War Greymon quit like a coward.
Ow! You take that back, girl!
I was reading an email from another kid.
You didn't have to read it so well.
Hey, you two, this isn't the time to be fighting.
Stupid emails.
It gets so bad it eats up all of their processing speed and slows War Greymon and Metal Garurumon to a near halt. To be clear, they receive a copious amount of messages from around the world, some of it hate mail, and it's so overwhelming it literally paralyzes them. And yet, these same emails are the very thing that lift them up. The love and support they receive from connection around the world is what gives them the clout they need to ratio Diaboromon. The message here is clear: the internet isn't just good or just bad, it's just a part of our lives that we need to figure out and acclimate ourselves to. These themes and allegory, we don't always need to understand them intrinsically to enjoy something. Sometimes just feeling the underlying structure beneath a story is enough to feel a connection to what it's getting at. At the same time, making these connections on a conscious level can really enrich your understanding and enjoyment of a piece of media, even if those connections weren't initially intended by the people who created it. Sometimes creatives can even add these structural connections to a work without even realizing it themselves. So with all that in mind, we're going back to our original question. What was Ghost Game about? To be honest, I think the truth has been in plain sight this whole time. And while the ending may have initially seemed out of the blue, it's incredibly fitting once it frames our understanding of the whole show. And perhaps, understanding our villain is the first step to putting it all together.
I can have a dark side. You want me to? You want me to? Yeah, I can have a dark side. If you want me to, I can have a dark side too.
So in the final episode, Gulas is revealed to be an alien from outer space. His home planet has been consumed by a galactic disaster known as the Endbringer, and he's arrived on Earth with the mission of destroying it in 2,000 years when it catches up with him. Obviously this goes a long way to explaining his, attitude problem. Eat or be eaten. Might makes right. It's a dog-eat-dog world. Forget it, Marge! It's Chinatown! When your entire home planet is destroyed, it changes a fella. Maybe life starts to feel a bit cheap. Maybe when it's in the name of the mission, any action is justified. Pragmatism above all else. There's a lot about this situation that's unclarified. Like, does the Endbringer just exist in the digital world, or maybe just the real world, or both? The digital world's link to our own isn't entirely spelled out, though it does at least seem to be tied to the technological infrastructure. But it's unestablished whether it's connected to the natural world like it was in Adventure or Survive. Is Gulas from the relative digital world of an alien civilization, or does the digital world just have its own alien civilizations, unrelated to our universe? Or is he just a radio signal that manifested as a Digimon when it finally reached Earth? Probably not, but who knows.
Now I'm confused and annoyed!
All we do know is that Gulas was apparently the original owner of the body before his consciousness was locked inside Gamamon. I initially thought that Hokuto might have used the Digivice to forcibly revert him like Ryudamon was, but based on the phrasing while recollecting his meeting with Gamamon, this probably isn't the case. He was just the weird kid that everyone picked on. But based on his Monkia of Dark Lord, he must have had some appearances as Gulas before meeting Hiro. So maybe Quantumon reverted him, or maybe he was defeated and reincarnated but somehow kept his memories, or maybe his current state is a side effect of travelling to Earth. In any case, he's a prisoner in his own body, but he's conscious, and autonomous enough to plant the seed of his GRB invasion before he leaves. Gulas is always watching. Whenever Gamamon is emotionally distressed or in mortal danger, Gulas rears his head. Makes sense, he's a survivor after all, but he's unable to retain control for long and Gamamon will re-establish himself as the dominant personality. The first time this happens on screen, it takes him by surprise. It's specifically attacking his friends and the memory of Bokumon dying that triggers his reversion. From his surprise, and the fact that he stops trying to escape just to be a dick, he probably thought that this one was a keeper. Wouldn't be the last time he makes that mistake. But Gamamon's will and connection to his friends was much stronger than he expected. In every subsequent manifestation, he relinquishes control willingly, at least after Hiro refuses to sync with him. I think over the course of a series, Gulas is gradually rebuilding his strength. I think if he could have achieved his Regulus form and erased Gamamon's consciousness at any time, he would have had a much easier time doing it earlier on. Gamamon's bond with Hiro, and specifically his ability to sync, is what's given him the edge in retaining dominance. But if that's the case, why does Gulas never do away with Hiro? Maybe because he can't? The last time, it was nearly hurting Hiro that triggered the loss of his control. Or maybe he's hedging his bets, playing the long game. Theoretically, if he could talk Hiro around to syncing with him, he could not only maintain permanent control of the body, but also attain the higher levels of power that he so desperately craves. It's probably both of those things, but maybe, just maybe, he genuinely does like Hiro. He may protest, he may deny it, but that just makes Gulas the ultimate tsundere. Or maybe yandere. Initially, he's annoyed that Hiro won't sync with him, but as he flies away, he says something interesting.
ずっと一緒にいたじゃねえか。俺の気持ち分かってんだろ。
何言ってんだよ。
まあいいや。
He's leaving, so he's not fishing for another sync at this point, and yet it seems like he's genuinely annoyed that Hiro doesn't understand him. He didn't choose to be in this pseudo little brother position, but now that he has a brother, he wants to be understood by him. When the others try to stop him from leaving, even though he swats them away with ease, he still stays to make a point, to prove to them exactly how much he doesn't care about them. Which, I don't know, I feel like if he didn't care, he wouldn't have cared enough to make that point. Like this is a case of protesting too much? Could it be that Gulas, despite himself, is being changed and affected by his interaction with Hiro and everyone else? Either because he's always watching or by virtue of sharing a body with Gamamon, like there's some kind of emotional kickback between the two of them. Well, it's hard to say. It could just be wishful thinking to see Gulas as this deeply damaged soul that secretly craves connection, even while he enacts tyranny. He calls Hiro Anarchy, but it's clearly dripping with irony and irreverence. When he finally gains dominance over Gamamon, he does so, ironically, by exploiting the love he has for his friends. Is that because he too sees their value, or was he just saying whatever he needed to get what he wanted? The devil can't enter your home until you invite him in. Again, it's inconclusive, but we at least understand him a little more, and what we know for certain is the only thing he respects above all is survival of the fittest. Gulas isn't just going to play nice, he needs to be beaten on his own terms. It's eat or be eaten. And so he rescinds his plan to forcibly terraform the natives and make them his own personal army, because he was beaten when he was eaten. His way wasn't the strongest. But how? What exactly gave them the edge? And I don't just mean friendship and irony. If Gulas was the antagonist and his views are being symbolically refuted by his defeat, what was the counter-argument? Gamamon is essentially a toddler, a somewhat well-behaved and well-mannered one, but a toddler nonetheless. Innocent and wide-eyed, it's up to his big brother Hiro to raise him right, because hell if Hokuto's gonna do it. Even before his dad vanished into the digital world, it seems Hiro took the role of homemaker. With his mother working abroad as an international journalist and his dad buried in his work, Hiro was undoubtedly the one stuck with the cooking, the cleaning, maintaining of the house, and being caregiver to his own father. It's probably why he's so inclined to help people and falls into the role of mediator. As begrudging and exasperated he is, it's probably just reflexive for him at this point. As such, he's quite a problem solver, always capable of assessing things and looking for the optimal solution to the optimal outcome. Even... talk no jitsu. This phrase has always rubbed me the wrong way. It just seems a bit dismissive of the notion of non-violent conflict resolution. Even in the instances where Hiro does talk down an enemy, it's after working out exactly how to do it, and usually involves some action during or prior to the resolution. Also, I like action and violence, but talking can be really fucking interesting too.
But I'm a different kind of Digimon, made from control spires. Does that mean I have a heart too? Or was I created without one?
These are all very good questions that I'd love to answer for you, but I'm not very good at this kind of stuff. Could you repeat the question?
I'm not sure I remember what I asked anymore.
Then we're both confused. Let's forget the whole thing and grab a bite.
And I really think non-violent conflict resolution is a big part of what Ghost Game is getting at. For a horror show, there aren't actually many deaths, and when there are, they're not fun. Like, maybe the closest to an exciting death is Arukenimon, but the rest are either sad or unnervingly matter-of-fact, in a manner that almost seems to be in direct response to the previous season's wanton destruction. Hiro could easily be bitter about his living situation, but despite his exasperation, he doesn't seem to hate his dad. On the contrary, he respects him for retaining his childlike wonder, for always looking at life like a wonderful adventure, for not being a cynical asshole, even when times are rough, especially when times are rough. Ghost Game has a reverence for life, and a reverence for death, and as such, killing has weight. Even when it was a mass-murdering sociopath like Sealsdramon biting the dust, it isn't celebrated. And I don't think it has anything to do with whether he deserved it or whether it was the morally correct thing to do. Just the act of killing and the sight of death is enough to disturb them. And it should. Life might be cheap to Gulas, but it isn't to Hiro. Starting war is easy. Keeping peace, that's work. To finally nail this thing down, I think we're going to need a quick play-by-play to put everything into perspective. So let's take things right from the Triceratops. So,
all we are is dust in the wind, dude.
Gamamon is Baby. He's a bit of a handful, but he's basically a good boy. He just can't control those pesky evolutions. They meet Mummymon, who's hostile at first, until they inform him he needs to update his medical license. When befriending Ruli and a fluffy fella, they let notorious asshole Dracmon off the hook, and plot twist, turns out he's an asshole, just feigning redemption. Maybe Hiro's goodwill is gonna bite him in the ass down the line. Then Kiyoshiro enters the fray, even though he wasn't ready for this jelly. Clockmon returns to take Hiro for the time of his life, till Tall, Dark and Mysterious bonks him into involuntary chronocide, and Hiro and his friends get their first real taste of death. Despite some protestations, Hiro's not going to stand by and let someone die, even someone villainous. No, he's staying alive. Staying alive. Ha 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 ha. Sorry, weird laugh. Clockmon can finally manifest after being repeatedly punched in the balls, repents for real, and despite his villainous roots becomes a real G, an absolute pillar of a community. In fact, he's normally on the neighborhood watch. Meanwhile, Angoramon has been sneaking off to hang out with a community of Digimon without telling the missus. They're strangers in a strange land, so of course they'd be cautious and feel safer in a Digimon-only space. But after a close shave, he welcomes Ruli in. Then Gulas happens, and he happens hard, and Hiro shook. How can his sweet little brother, who barely grasps the concept of death, harbor such darkness? Then they're attacked by a fairy tale villain who eats sleeping children. Hiro's reluctant to use lethal force despite the stakes. It's not just a matter of whether it's necessary, but the matter of the precedent and the example he's setting for Gamamon, and whether or not it will trigger an appearance from a Triceratops. But they just blow up Cherrymon's arm and he fucks off for 100 years.
Yeah, that's convenient.
Yes, it is convenient.
Then they encounter with a dark Digimon who just want to go home. They're misunderstood, naught but outsiders to this world, and seen as nothing but monsters despite their good intentions. And yet they see something special in the partnership between Hiro and Gamamon and the power for good it could have in the future. Again, Gulas appears to do some killing, albeit in a slightly more self-defensey kind of way. They certainly don't seem as choked up about it. Dracmon comes back and dies, seems like a bit of a waste, but there you go. And Goramon meets up with an old buddy who's taken up a new hobby of murdering people because he's a bad egg. He has no choice but to make it over easy. Then Digitamamon essentially calls him a race traitor. The letter? Some stuff happens. Enter Espimon, who's looking for Hiro, but he can't because of a silly misunderstanding. Gee, there's a lot of that going around. I wonder if that has anything to do with anything. After reaching a lakeside town and finding Raremon, a deformed, rabid mess, Hiro makes a tough call to put Old Yeller down. Despite his strong pacifism, in this instance, death would be a mercy. But Hiro's not down for long. To save the zombie spider-infected Ryudamon, Hiro literally endangers his entire class with horrific body horror mutation, because no matter the odds, he'll always aim to save everyone. Even if there's only a 1% chance of a happy outcome, he'll take it every time. And I guess his friends are just cool with that, or at the very least, accustomed to it. Calamaramon mentions the portal to the digital world being bendy. This doesn't end up meaning anything.
Speaking of Calamaramon.
Titties?
No.
Up next is another appearance from Gulas, who rescues Hiro and Ruli from Monkey Chain Hell. He mentions Hiro has taken another step towards understanding him this time, but I feel like he tried that last time and got shooed away. I guess you could argue that the difference this time is that both of the previous hits had a body count, and despite putting Hiro and Ruli in the aforementioned Monkey Chain Hell, there could have theoretically been a peaceful solution to this had Hiro been in an able-bodied position. So in showing some amenability towards Gulas, Hiro has in theory taken another step towards understanding him. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but it's somewhat supported by his next appearance where he's really pushing for that sync, trying to get Hiro into alignment. But he's undercut by Gekomon, and when he turns his aggression towards the well-meaning minion, Hiro stands in the way and forces him to back down, making this the first time he's been able to stop Gulas from taking the kill. Whatever his motives may be, it's not in his interest to alienate Hiro for the sake of petty vengeance, so he pieces out once more. Hopping back a bit, we get a few glimpses of Hokuto. He's in the digital world, and he doesn't seem to be in a hurry, and he doesn't seem to be in any particular peril. He just seems to be arsing about. Well, I guess that's another mystery box getting knocked off the metaphorical shelf. some stuff happens!
もしかして漆黒の覇王? What?
Wait a minute. Is that... Could it be? Balmon? That lanky prick? This does not bring great joy to my knowledge, I'll tell you that much. Anyway, in a battle against Kazuhamon, she deems the relationship between Hiro and Gamamon to be unpure and unnatural. But they ain't having none of that. The power of their bond prevails and a shining star emerges.
It's time to get really, really, really serious. Serious eyes and a serious nose. Serious faces in a serious pose.
Next episode, we get a small Ghoulish cameo, some more clues to the nature of the Digimon migration, and the mysterious voice that's sending them there. In 63, we finally get an influx of Digimon migrations, building some momentum into the final episodes of Ghost Game. After one more quick monster of the week. After touching base with Hokuto, we learn that the digital world is facing some nefarious disaster that's causing a worldwide blackout. Friends and enemies past must join together to send Hiro and company to the digital world, that they might save both it and their world from impending doom. After one more quick Monster of the Week episode. Okay, that's a little unfair. This does serve to showcase the effects of the GRB virus and also foreshadow Ghoulish finally taking dominance over the body, as he whispers into Gamamon's ear like a little demon on his shoulder. Doubly nefarious that Ghoulish could synthesize an antidote whenever he wanted. He's created this problem and now he's gaslighting Gamamon into giving up his agency to solve it.
Typical politician. What?
Finally, in the penultimate episode, the heroes are pushed to the very brink by Bloom Lordmon. In a moment of weakness, Ghoulish manipulates Gamamon into letting him take the reins. He digivolves to Regulusmon and reveals his true intentions. To conquer the world and inflict his GRB virus onto all. That they would fight for nothing but strength and survival, with him as their king. But Hiro is still connected to Gamamon and helps draw him out to wrestle Regulusmon for control. Everyone's sucked into a pocket universe within Gamamon's body and our boy gets mortally wounded. But a mysterious voice freezes time and Hiro enters another pocket universe Inception style. Ghoulish tries to pull a fast one on him, but he doesn't properly study for the role, lacking the lingual quirks of Hiro's little brother. In the end, it's Hiro's connection to Gamamon that allows him to see through the deception and rescue him from deletion. In round 2, Seriousmon ain't screwing around, and by taking a page out of Ghoulish's book, he's able to defeat and assimilate his shadow self. In the most horrifying, yet cute and smuggest way possible. Finally, we learn of the true puppet master behind everything, Quantumon. At first, she was just fucking around to find out, but in response to the threat of Ghoulish, she sent more Digimon to the real world to escape the GRB invasion and cut the connection to the real world, causing the technological blackout. Finally, Ghoulish reveals his extraterrestrial origins and the oncoming cataclysm that will bring an end to their world. And in this instance, Ghoulish teaches us a valuable lesson. That to understand each other and form connections, we have to talk no jitsu. Because how the fuck were we supposed to figure this out? If you truly loved me, you'd know what was bothering me! Quantumon freaks out and zaps most of the Digimon back to the digital world and considers separating the connection permanently. In all of her calculations, successful symbiosis and coexistence was very low. Knowing that, do they still wish to take this path? Girl, just who the hell do you think you're talking to? This was never even a choice for Hiro and Manakawa and the gang. Weeks pass and together they work together to build a nation for Digimon and humans to coexist, to chart a course to a brighter future, like a North Star shining in the sky.
Well, what does it say? Where is it? What's it all about, damn it? Don't keep us in suspense, Serge. This has been a complete fucking nightmare. Just tell us what the fuck is going on!
A little all over the place. There is a storyline here. It's a bit thin. It's more implicit than explicit. That's cool. Lots of Digimon seasons are. Yeah, that's why they call it subtext, not text. Whew. I want to prefix this conclusion by saying I don't think Ghost Game is a perfect show by any means. It could have done a lot more with what it had. I feel like it could have challenged Hiro's attitude of pacifism a bit more strongly. I mean, I get it's a kid's show and teaching the heroism of temperance is a positive quality, but if Dracmon had come back as a more serious threat, it would have made a great contrast to Clockmon. Like, yeah, letting this guy go came back to bite us, but here's this guy who seemed irredeemable, but he was given a second chance and now he's a cool dude. It would have given Hiro's choice to forgive more weight, you know? While I think the series had a great roster of partner lines, I don't think it fully capitalized on the personality changes or the fluidity of partnering. And there weren't really strong character arcs or solid ending points for Ruli and Kyoshiro. Maybe that's just life. You know, closure's a boon and a rare one at that. Not everything gets a neat ending. The horror angle was a great aesthetic, but I do wonder if sometimes it was a bit limiting that every story had to fit the horror format. Even if it was a convenient shorthand for establishing a premise, horror's been a part of Digimon since the beginning, and maybe it's most effective when used sparingly. But above all, it could have been serialized. It was 1.5 years long, and it was testing my patience after a while. It would have been better! Even now, my mind wanders with the structural progression that could have been. Ghost Game, it was a show of contradictions. But it's wholeheartedly itself. And it's not fair to judge something solely on what you would like it to be. You need to understand it for what it is. So, taking all of Ghost Game's plot into account, everything that happened, everything it meant, here's what I think. Ghost Game is about culture clash, miscommunication, and the challenges but ultimate benefit of reconciling our differences through understanding and connection. Sometimes you come face to face with the unknown, and it's truly terrifying. Fight or flight takes hold, and both Digimon and humans lash out in fear. To some, conflict is our natural state, and the only way to reconcile differences is through violence and domination, a worldview born from a lack of connection. But to Hiro, violence is rarely the answer. Certainly not the first answer or anything to be relished. Some Digimon are merely immigrants or tourists, aliens of a sort, just travelling to experience a new culture or to meet new people or in pursuit of academics. No different from his father travelling the digital world. But many are refugees, forcibly displaced by the GRB invasion, and they're just trying to make their way as best they can. Many of them feel out of sync with their environment, disconnected, like ghosts. And to fully manifest, they need support and peace of mind, but above all, connection. To their own community, to the local culture, to friends, family, and loved ones. And in a sense, this means that Ghost Game doesn't have any filler episodes, because all of these monsters of the week, they're all arguments against the views of Gulas Gamamon. Affirmations that even if a cultural divide seems unbridgeable, it can be done, as long as we're willing to understand each other. Because most of the time, the unknown is never as scary as you've imagined it to be. And maybe that monster is just a friend you haven't seen in the light yet. And at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. To belong, to have dignity, and the freedom to pursue our lives and passions in peace. Reconciling so many individual value systems. Is it possible? Is it even worth trying?
Yes! Obviously! Even if it's difficult, even if it seems impossible, even when the self-interested try to trick us into hating each other. If we're kind and clever and careful enough, we can make it work! And not just because we have so much to learn from each other, or because we're stronger and safer together, but because what the hell is the alternative? Do you know how much of the universe is just empty space? Billions and billions of light years between these tiny rocks and burning balls of gas. But when we look up at the night sky, we don't see lonely stars. We see constellations. As long as our hearts are in sync, life always has meaning.
Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Well, guess I'll see you in another 5 years. Peace out, home dogs.